The Academy of Interstellar Warfare did not permit fights. It permitted corrections. That distinction mattered. Among most species represented within its walls, conflict was not chaos, it was instruction. Hierarchy-born civilizations believed order had to be taught physically. Words were unreliable. Displays were clearer. Pain, when properly administered, was considered an honest language. If a cadet failed to recognize their place, another would help them understand it. Instructor Hale Rohr had overseen such disputes for 12 full cycles. He had learned their rhythms, the warning posture, the circling, the ritualized escalation that allowed both parties to decide how far they wished to go. Most ended quickly. A shove, a snarl, exposed teeth, or flared claws. One cadet backed down. The lesson concluded. Serious injuries were rare. Deaths were non-existent. The system worked. That afternoon, Rohr stood at the edge of training floor 7 with his arms folded behind his back, observing the rotation. Mixed species drills, high density, elevated tension, exactly where corrections tended to emerge. His attention drifted, then stopped. A human, Marcus Reed. Age 31, species human, Terran. Enhancements, none. Armor, standard Academy issue. By Academy metrics, he was unimpressive. Medium height. Lean build, no visible natural weapons, no reinforced skeletal ridges, no bioengineered muscle density. His file listed endurance as moderate, strength as below multiple predator species, reflexes as acceptable, nothing that suggested trouble. Rohr had reviewed the file twice, mostly out of habit. Humans were rare here, not because they were weak, but because they did not naturally conform to dominance-based training environments. Most washed out early. Some transferred. A few adapted by becoming loud, aggressive approximations of predator cultures. Marcus Reed had done none of that. On the floor, he moved through warm-up drills with quiet efficiency. No flourish. No wasted motion. He didn't seek space, but he took it when it was available. Across the floor, Keith Var noticed him. Rohr recognized the shift immediately. Keith Var belonged to a pack predator species that evolved through ritual combat and enforced hierarchy. Tall, dense muscle mass, forward-set eyes optimized for motion tracking. His kind respected strength displayed openly and despised restraint. They often mistook restraint for fear. Keith Var slowed his drill, watching the human. Marcus did not look back. That was the first mistake. Keith Var stepped closer, deliberately placing his shadow across Marcus's stance. A classic dominance probe. Let the body speak before the mouth did. Marcus finished his repetition and straightened. He looked at Keith Var. His expression showed no challenge. No submission, just attention. Rohr did not intervene. This was still within acceptable bounds. A moment of testing. Most disputes ended here, either with retreat or escalation. Keith Var leaned forward and spoke in his native language, a low, resonant growl. Then he switched to common. You stand in my space. Marcus glanced down at the floor markings. He shifted half a pace sideways, not back. Just enough to clear overlap. Didn't mean to, he said. That should have ended it. Keith Var snarled softly. The human voice had not carried the tone he expected. No tremor, no deference, no urgency. You move when I say, Keith Var replied. Marcus looked at him again. Calm, breathing steady. I already did. Rohr's posture tightened. The exchange had crossed from ritual probing into fixation. Keith Var was no longer checking hierarchy. He was offended by the absence of reaction. Rohr shifted his weight, ready to step in if needed. Keith Var began to circle. He brushed Marcus's shoulder with his arm as he passed. Not hard, just contact. A reminder. Nearby cadets slowed their drills. Corrections attracted attention by design. Marcus did not turn. He did not square his shoulders. He continued walking toward the next station. Keith Var laughed, a sharp barking sound, and followed. Then he shoved Marcus from behind. The human stumbled one step forward and caught himself. He did not fall. He did not turn immediately. Rohr raised one hand. This was the threshold where instructors usually moved closer, still allowed but watched carefully. Marcus turned slowly. Something had changed. His breathing was deeper now, slower, controlled in a way Rohr recognized from combat-trained species, not from unenhanced humans. Do not do that again, Marcus said. His voice was not loud. It did not demand attention. It carried. Keithvar hesitated. For the first time, confusion flickered across the predator's face. Marcus was not posturing. His hands were down, his stance neutral. No crouch, no raised guard, no visible preparation. Predator species read movement. They read tension. They read the promise of violence. Marcus Reed gave none. That unsettled Keithvar more than any threat display could have. Roar took a step forward. Keithvar struck. Fast, heavy, a wide swing aimed at the side of the human's head. Not lethal, dominant. A blow meant to establish order. Marcus moved. Not backward. He stepped inside the strike. The impact of forearm against bone cracked sharply through the air. Keithvar hissed in surprise. The human's hand closed around the predator's wrist, not crushing, not frantic, precise. Keithvar's momentum betrayed him. Balance shifted. Weight carried forward. Marcus stepped again. Close, too close. Claws and teeth had no space to work. His other hand struck once, short, controlled, into the upper chest where nerve clusters converged. Keithvar gasped. The world seemed to pause. Then Marcus released him and stepped back. Keithvar staggered. His legs failed. He dropped to one knee, then to both. Roar was already moving, but when he reached them, the exchange was over. 3 seconds. One cadet standing still, arms at his sides, chest rising and falling. One cadet on the floor, conscious, breathing, unable to rise. Silence swallowed the training hall. Roar scanned quickly. No blood, no exposed fractures. Pain, but not fatal. He looked at Marcus Reed. What happened? Roar demanded. Marcus did not look away from the fallen cadet. He told me to move, Marcus said evenly. I did. He didn't stop. A chill ran through Roar's spine. This was not rage. This was not panic. This was conclusion. And for the first time in 12 cycles, Instructor Hale Roar realized something deeply unsettling. He had not stepped in too late because he was slow. He had stepped in too late because the human had already finished. Silence did not end immediately. It lingered. Training Floor 7 remained frozen as if the academy itself was recalculating. Cadets stood where they were, mid-motion, eyes fixed on the same impossible image. A predator species cadet down, breathing hard, unable to rise, and a human standing over him without triumph, threat or apology. Instructor Hale Roar was the first to move. He signaled medical response with a sharp gesture. 2 medics broke from the perimeter and hurried forward. Keithvar flinched when they approached, instinctively curling inward, then forced himself to remain still. Pride warred with pain. Marcus Reed did not step away until Roar told him to. Stand down, Roar said. Marcus complied immediately. He took 2 steps back and placed his hands behind his head. Fingers interlaced, not submission, not surrender, compliance. That distinction did not go unnoticed. The medics assessed Keithvar quickly. Neural shock, temporary motor lock, severe bruising across the upper chest and shoulder. No internal bleeding, no fractures. Painful but survivable. He'll recover, one medic said quietly. Roar exhaled once slowly. He turned to Marcus. Remain where you are, Roar ordered. Yes, instructor, Marcus replied. No argument. No explanation offered. Roar dismissed the remaining cadets with a sharp command. Training ended early. That alone would feed rumors for cycles. As the floor emptied, eyes lingered on the human. Some with curiosity, some with fear. Most with something harder to define. Reassessment. Keithvar was carried out on a grav stretcher, conscious but silent. He did not look at Marcus as he passed. Not because he was afraid to, but because he no longer knew how Roar waited, until the medics were gone before speaking again. You did not escalate, Roar said carefully. No, Marcus replied. You did not posture. No. You did not attempt to dominate after he fell. There was no reason, Marcus said. Roar studied him. The human's heart rate was elevated but already slowing. Muscle tension was minimal. Stress markers that should have been spiking after violence simply weren't. This was not adrenaline-fueled reaction. This was controlled action. Return to your quarters, Roar said at last. You will be summoned. Marcus nodded and left the floor without another word. The footage spread faster than Roar anticipated. Every training floor was recorded, every angle archived. The Academy claimed transparency as a core principle, but transparency had consequences. Predator species cadets replayed the incident obsessively. They slowed it frame by frame, measured reach, compared mass ratios, looked for missteps, luck, error. They found none. The human had not relied on strength. He had not relied on speed alone. He had relied on distance, closing it where natural weapons became liabilities. To predator minds, it was deeply unsettling. That night, Instructor Hale Rohr filed the official incident report. The wording mattered. He classified it as a concluded dominance dispute with medical outcome. Not assault, not excessive force, not instructor failure. Concluded meant the interaction had ended before escalation. Protocols could engage. Medical outcome meant injury occurred, but intervention was not required to halt the threat. The report triggered an automatic review. Rohr expected resistance. He expected questions. He did not expect surprise at the decision not to suspend Marcus Reed. By morning, whispers had spread through the academy corridors. The human had not been punished. Some called it favoritism. Others called it oversight. A few called it dangerous. Instructor Yel Maroro called it interesting. The evaluation chamber was small and deliberately plain. Neutral lighting. No restraints. No visible observers, though Marcus knew better. He stood alone at the center when the door slid open. Instructor Rohr entered first, data slate in hand. Behind him came Maroro, whose species specialized in behavioral assessment. Her eyes tracked Marcus immediately. Breathing cadence. Posture alignment, micro-adjustments in stance. "You are not exhibiting post-conflict stress," she said after several seconds. Marcus shrugged. "I don't feel stressed." Rohr didn't like how easily that came. "Keith Var outweighed you significantly," Rohr said. "His species possesses natural weapons. Why did you not disengage when he approached?" Marcus thought for a moment before answering. "Because he wasn't dangerous yet." Maroro tilted her head slightly. "Define dangerous." "When he started touching me," Marcus said. "After I told him to stop." Rohr exchanged a glance with Maroro. "You understand dominance disputes are tolerated," Rohr said. "You could have submitted." Marcus nodded. "I did, I moved. That was the first thing I did." Maroro tapped her slate. "You did not submit fully." "I'm not part of his hierarchy," Marcus replied. The statement carried no defiance. It was simply factual. Rohr leaned forward. "Then why end it so decisively?" Marcus took longer to answer this time. "Because if I let it continue," he said slowly, "someone gets hurt worse. Either him or me or whoever steps in." Maroro's eyes narrowed. "You calculated that?" "Yes." The room felt smaller. Calculated violence was not unusual in the academy. What unsettled Rohr was the absence of emotion tied to it. "Your strikes were precise," Maroro said. "You avoided vital targets." "There was no reason to escalate," Marcus replied. "When did you decide the outcome?" Rohr asked. Marcus met his gaze. "When he shoved me from behind?" Silence settled. "You did not posture," Maroro said. "You did not threaten. Why?" Marcus exhaled softly. "Posturing gives people time to decide wrong things." Rohr ended the evaluation there. Keith Var regained full consciousness later that day. When informed of the review outcome, he said nothing. When shown the footage, he watched it without comment. At the end, he looked away. "He didn't roar," Keith Var said quietly. "He didn't circle." The medic nodded. "Predators give time," Keith Var continued. "We show teeth, we warn." The medic said nothing. "He didn't give me time," Keith Var said. He was there. Then he was done. By the next cycle, behavior across the academy had changed. Cadets kept their distance. Touch became deliberate. Corrections grew rarer and quieter. Marcus Reed did not change at all. He trained. He ate, he rested. He spoke when spoken to. Instructor Hale Rohr watched him closely. The human showed no aggression until a clear line was crossed. Then the change was immediate, not explosive. Final. And Rohr began to understand the problem. The academy believed conflict escalated along a curve. Warning, display, engagement, resolution. Humans did not follow that curve. They absorbed pressure. They assessed. They decided, and once that decision was made, there was no ceremony left to interrupt, only aftermath. The academy preferred patterns. Patterns were predictable. Predictable things could be regulated, corrected, taught. Entire species were categorized by how they escalated conflict, through ritual, through threat display, through collective response. Humans did not fit. That was the problem. Instructor Hale Rohr realized it fully during the doctrine review. The chamber was larger than the evaluation room, designed for disagreement. Senior instructors occupied elevated seats along the curved walls. Behavioral analysts stood behind translucent panels, data streams flickering across them. A civilian observer from outside the academy sat near the center, silent, attentive. The footage played again. No sound, just movement. A shove. A turn. 3 seconds. One cadet down. Replay, someone said. The footage slowed. Frame by frame, analysts layered projections, force vectors, reaction times, distance collapse. The data made it worse, not better. This violates escalation expectations, one senior instructor said. There was no warning exchange. Rohr nodded. Correct. Why didn't you intervene sooner? Because there was nothing to intervene in, Rohr replied. Until it was already finished. That answer unsettled the room. Another instructor leaned forward. The speed of resolution is concerning. Yes, Rohr said. It is also what prevented lethal escalation. Or caused it, another voice countered. If he misjudged by even a fraction, he didn't, Rohr said. Silence followed. The civilian observer broke it. Because the human exercised restraint. Yes, Rohr agreed. But not hesitation. That distinction hung in the air. The analyst brought up Marcus Reed's behavioral profile. No aggression markers, no dominance seeking, no intimidation patterns, stress tolerance higher than baseline humans, boundary recognition unusually rigid. He doesn't negotiate status, one analyst said. He enforces personal limits. Rohr nodded slowly. That's the misalignment. The academy defined dominance, disputes as educational, because they clarified social order. Marcus Reed had not clarified order. He had enforced a boundary. Those were not the same thing. Elsewhere in the academy, the effects were already rippling. Predator species cadets adjusted their behavior first. They stopped probing quietly. Stopped casual contact. Stopped using physical presence as punctuation, not because of fear in the traditional sense, but because the rules, they relied on no longer guaranteed safety. Ritual assumed participation. The human did not participate. Non-predator species noticed something else. Humans moved differently now. Not louder. Not more aggressive, just less accommodating. They did not step aside reflexively. They did not tolerate encroachment. They did not apologize for space. They issued boundaries. Once, Keith Varr returned to limited training under supervision. His movements were careful now, not weakened but precise. He avoided crowded drills. He avoided Marcus Reed's training window entirely. When asked why during counseling, he answered without hesitation. I misread him, Keith Varr said. How? The counselor asked. I thought stillness meant submission, Keith Varr replied. On my world, that's what it means. And on his? Keith Varr was quiet for a long moment. It means waiting, he said. Waiting for what? For the moment when it stops being optional. Marcus Reed noticed the changes. He noticed the extra distance people gave him. The way conversations slowed when he approached. The care with which others chose their words. He did not correct them. He did not encourage it either. During a mixed-species sparring session, a cadet misjudged a step and brushed Marcus's shoulder lightly. The cadet froze instantly. Several observers tensed. Marcus stopped, looked at him, then stepped aside without a word and continued walking. The tension drained slowly from the room. Instructor Rohr watched from the edge of the floor. He realized then how much effort Marcus had spent before the incident doing exactly that, adjusting, yielding making room. The academy had mistaken that for weakness. The doctrine review concluded with no formal declaration of error. The academy never admitted fault publicly. Instead, guidance packets were updated quietly. Intervention thresholds revised. Behavioral notes expanded. A single page labeled Human Cadets carried more text than most species received in a chapter. Rohr read it twice. Humans do not posture. Absence of threat display does not indicate submission. Once a verbal boundary is issued and crossed, resolution may be immediate. Instructor response must prioritize early engagement, not escalation cues. Rohr closed the file and leaned back. He thought of the moment Marcus had turned. Not angry, not afraid, just finished tolerating. That memory stayed with him. Marcus was summoned again, this time before a mixed panel. Senior instructors, behavioral specialists, the civilian observer. The footage played once more. "You are altering academy behavior," one instructor said bluntly. "That wasn't my goal," Marcus replied. "I know," Roar said quietly. The civilian observer leaned forward. "Your species has hierarchy," she said. "Why did you reject his challenge?" Marcus considered the question. "We have hierarchy," he said. "But we don't enforce it with strangers." "Explain." "If someone wants authority over me," Marcus said, "they earn it through responsibility, not fear." A ripple of discomfort moved through the room. "And when someone tries to force it?" the observer asked. Marcus met her gaze. "Then it stops being about hierarchy," he said.
"It becomes about safety."
That word echoed. Safety. The academy taught dominance as education. Humans treated violation as threat. Those philosophies were incompatible. The panel concluded with a new classification: human conflict response boundary-based. Do not rely on escalation cues. Early intervention recommended once a verbal limit is expressed. It was an admission without using the word. Marcus and Keith Varr crossed paths once more near the mess hall. There were witnesses. Keith Varr stopped and inclined his head. Not submission. Acknowledgement. Marcus returned the nod and walked on. No words were exchanged. That was enough. Instructor Roar observed from a distance. He understood now why Keith Varr avoided Marcus. Not because Marcus wanted to fight, because if he ever did, it would already be over. The academy did not announce its changes. There was no address, no declaration that doctrine had failed, no acknowledgement that a single human had forced an institution, built on hierarchy, to re-examine itself. Instead, the change arrived the way real shifts always did, silently. Instructors began stepping in sooner. Cadets began touching less. Distance became deliberate. What unsettled most species was not what Marcus Reed had done. It was what he had not done. He did not claim dominance. He did not demand status. He did not leverage the incident to rise. He simply continued. That made him difficult to categorize. Predator species relied on visible signals to navigate safety. Teeth meant danger. Raised spines meant warning. Circling meant negotiation. Marcus gave none of those. He walked through shared spaces with the same neutral awareness as before, neither yielding nor imposing. His presence no longer invited tests, not because of fear alone, but because no one could tell where the line actually was. Only that it existed, and that once crossed, there would be no second chance to reconsider. Instructor Haleroar noticed something else. Humans clustered less than before. Not out of isolation, but out of independence. They trained alone or in pairs. They spoke quietly. They rarely postured. When conflict arose between non-human cadets, humans often disengaged entirely, stepping away rather than spectating, as if violence that was not necessary simply did not exist to them. Roar observed Marcus during controlled sparring sessions. He was cooperative, predictable, almost conservative, until a partner ignored a boundary. Then the session ended immediately, not with injury, with certainty. Roar adjusted his teaching methods. Accordingly, he no longer waited for raised voices or threat displays. When humans were involved, the first verbal boundary now triggered instructor proximity, not punishment, prevention. The Academy's old model assumed conflict built momentum. Humans proved it could end momentum just as quickly. Keith Varr watched these changes from the margins. He had returned to full duty. His body healed faster than his pride, but pride, he discovered, was easier to reframe than he'd expected. He had not lost a dominance dispute. He had misread a rule. In private sessions, he struggled to articulate the difference. "I wasn't testing him," Keith Varr admitted once. "I was confirming myself." The counselor tilted her head. "Explain." "In my culture, you push until someone pushes back," Keith Varr said. "That tells you where you stand." "And he didn't?" "No," Keith Varr said quietly. "He waited." "For what?" "For me to decide whether I was just being loud or actually dangerous." The realization unsettled him. Predators relied on time, on extended displays that allowed assessment. Humans shortened time. They compressed it. Keith Varr began watching Marcus from a distance, not to study technique but behavior. The human avoided conflict whenever possible, yielded space, de-escalated verbally, took responsibility for accidental contact. But when he said stop, that was not a request. That was a final marker. Keith Varr understood now why the incident felt so disorienting. Marcus had not been competing. He had been ending a risk. The footage was added to the first-year curriculum under a new heading, Non-Ritualized Conflict Response. Cadets watched it with different eyes now. Not for spectacle, for absence. No roaring, no circling, no prolonged exchange, just decision. During one viewing, a cadet raised a clawed hand. Why didn't the human stop when the instructor moved? The cadet asked. Rohr answered honestly. Because by the time authority recognized the shift, he said, the situation was already resolved. Another cadet asked, is that dangerous? Rohr considered the question carefully. Yes, he said. If misunderstood. That answer lingered. The academy adapted. Slowly, carefully. Not all species accepted the change. Some called it an overcorrection. Others claimed humans were being coddled. Rohr rejected that. Humans were not protected. They were unpredictable in a way the academy had failed to account for. The new doctrine did not restrict humans. It restricted assumptions. One evening, Rohr found Marcus on the outer track, running alone beneath the artificial sky. His pace was steady, unhurried. Rohr matched him for a short stretch. You've altered our training culture, Rohr said. That wasn't my intention, Marcus replied. I know, Rohr said. They ran in silence for several seconds. People think not fighting means letting things happen, Marcus said eventually. It doesn't. Rohr waited. It means choosing when things end, Marcus finished. Rohr nodded. That was the core difference. Predator cultures prolonged conflict to define hierarchy. Humans truncated it to preserve safety. The review board reconvened one final time before the cycle ended. This time the footage was accompanied by behavioral overlays. From across the academy, reduced. Injury rates, fewer disputes, shorter confrontations. One senior instructor spoke reluctantly. Efficiency has increased. Another added, fatal escalation risk has decreased. The civilian observer folded her hands. You didn't just teach others about humans, she said. You taught them about boundaries. No one argued. The board formalized the final change. Dominance disputes remain permitted. Boundary violations are not. It was subtle. It was profound. Keith Varr encountered Marcus one last time during a joint drill. The space was crowded. Movements overlapped. Tension spiked briefly. Marcus paused. Keith Varr stopped immediately. No words were exchanged. Both adjusted their paths and continued. Several cadets noticed. That moment spread faster than the footage ever had. Not because it was dramatic. Because it showed something new. Understanding. Instructor Rohr stood alone in the observation deck that night. He replayed the original incident once more, not focusing on the strike, but on the moment before it. The stillness, the restraint, the line that had been drawn quietly and crossed loudly. The academy had been built to recognize threats that announced themselves. Marcus Reed had revealed the danger of those that didn't. The cycle ended. The academy endured. But its understanding of conflict had changed forever. Not because of dominance, but because of decision. The academy did not change all at once. It never did. Institutions survived by pretending continuity, even when their foundations shifted. New rules were framed as clarifications. New doctrines were called refinements. What mattered was not what was said, but what behavior no longer occurred. No one shoved Marcus Reed again. Not openly. Not casually. Not just to see what would happen. That alone marked the end of an era. Marcus completed his training cycle without incident. He advanced through drills at a steady pace, neither excelling nor struggling in ways that drew attention. His evaluations remained consistent, disciplined, cooperative, efficient. No aggression flags, no dominance-seeking indicators. Some instructors found that frustrating. They wanted a category. They wanted a label that explained him. Instructor Hale Rohr knew better by now. Marcus was not an exception. He was a contradiction. The final assessment took place in the primary lecture hall. Not a trial, not a hearing, a review. Cadets from every species filled the tiers. First years, veterans, instructors, observers. The academy did not announce the purpose of the gathering, but most suspected it anyway. The footage played one last time. No sound, just motion. Rohr stood at the front, hands folded behind his back. This recording, he said, was originally reviewed as an anomaly. He paused, letting the silence settle. It is no longer classified that way. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Roar continued. For cycles, we taught that dominance disputes educate by clarifying hierarchy. That conflict escalates gradually. That posture precedes action. He gestured toward the frozen frame, Marcus stepping inside the strike. This incident forced us to confront a blind assumption.